How's it going? I'm Aaron, and this is Seeking Media Productions giving you a video game review. So I've loved multiple different kinds of genres, but I gotta say when it comes down to movies or video games or books, but specifically in this case for video games, I'm a big fan of horror. And one of the best titles out there happens to be Resident Evil. I've been a fan of the Resident Evil franchise for quite some time, and I had to get on the ball when the latest entry, which is Resident Evil Requiem, got on the board. Now, with Resident Evil Requiem, this is the next entry of the series, and it follows after Village, but this time we're going into the case of two protagonists. Of course, we got our we got Grace Ashcroft, who is pretty much a newer character in certain respects to the entry, and she's a FBI agent working on a particular case that has to involve aspects in her past that's reoccurring. But one of the more interesting basically protagonists we get to play with is the series staple Leon S. Kennedy, who is on his own unique journey for both his own redemption, for things that happened for his past, and also for his for a cure, as you find out throughout the game as to why he would need that. As the story is, or where it stands at this point, this is basically taking place 28 years after the events of the destruction of Raccoon City, thanks to the outbreak of the T virus or the tyrant virus, however you want to interchange with that. Again, we are following Grace Ashcroft, an FBI agent who ends up getting kidnapped by one of the newer or other antagonists in the series, an individual named Victor Gideon. And in that particular sense, when she gets kidnapped, she gets taken into the bowels, actually going into around the Raccoon City incident, and she ends up finding unique things that tells about her ties to the T virus and the events of Raccoon City. For Leon S. Kennedy, he's high on the trails of Victor Gideon, trying to locate clues to try and find any particular aspect that will help him survive a unique new change with him, which is unfortunately a virus, the T virus, coming back into his system thanks to him being involved or in this particular case exposed to the T virus in this new strand, which is in this game is being dubbed as the Raccoon City Syndrome. Now, some of the aspects of this story that I actually found interesting is basically this game serves as a true requiem for Leon's story within the Resident Evil franchise, but specifically which is his ties towards what happened to him in Raccoon City and what developed him to be the cool, badass character that he became in later entries. It also founds with his severe aspects of survivor's guilt. And then when you look at it from Grace's standpoint, seeing how her familial ties basically lines up between the Raccoon City incident and other characters around the franchise in general too is pretty daunting in certain respects, but at the same time is very intriguing in various others. Now, as far as what I really did care for in Resident Evil Requiem really centers on that if this was going to serve as a swan song in some respects for Leon's story, I wish that there was other characters that was also brought into this as well, i.e. Jill Valentine, Chris, or his sister, the Redfield. I really wish they would have Ada Wong would have had more presence here, because I feel as though if you cannot talk about the Raccoon City incident or Umbrella if you don't involve a lot of those other characters that has strong ties to that as well. Now, when we look at Resident Evil Requiem from the gameplay point of view, there was a lot of cool things that was going on. This again, like I said, this game has you be able to have two unique protagonists to be able to play through, and depending on whether or not how you set it up, playing in them in their respected roles, or the way that the as the game makers or the particular game wants you to see it through, as the more authentic method for playing either story or either particular character's point of view, really changes up the style and the pace of the game itself. For Grace, it is very much recommended that you play her as a first pointed perspective, i.e. Looking back towards Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, that new first person point of view, which ends up hyping up a lot of the horror elements and the desperation, because in this particular case, any particular ammo or other resources are pretty much scarce, and you actually, even though unlike Ethan Winters and the earlier in the other two preceding games, with Grace being an FBI agent, she definitely do have a lot more agency in her combat abilities. She knows how to shoot guns. She knows how to evade certain things. But again, it's almost on the point of view of it still being surviving the horrific events that she has to be thrusted into. And then when you look at it from Leon S. Kennedy's point of view, he's a veteran. And in the third person perspective, you gain or over the shoulder view. Again, it feels just like if he was playing this as RE4 or any other entries that he's involved into, or other characters with that strong arm perspective. He's pretty much a tank. He's able to take out enemies far more effectively than he would actually necessarily feel as though any particular normal character would be able to do. And of course, his trademark charm and his stylistic attacks and approaches, and of course the wonderful array of different kinds of different guns and ammunition you're able to play through is also very much enjoyable. When you look at it through the combat of certain enemies, this particular entry, which is actually one of my lower points for it, doesn't have enough variation. It really much is the style, just the various versions of zombies that you are exposed to, and you maybe get a few other BOWs or biological weapons, such as, well, you find those out a little bit later, not to really explore that out for you, but it's not nearly as much as you would actually hope would be here. The certain levels where you had to evade or handle the more mutated creatures, such as the girl, and that was actually really interesting foe to deal with, or some of the other bloated like characters, is really cool. But again, not enough variation. Some of the interesting things they did with the zombies is that because of the mutation of the T virus, they are able to understand, gain some form or reclaim some form or aspect of their original personality. So it's really interesting, really cool when you come across some of these zombies. They're either like in the kitchen, if there was a chef, they're cooking, still trying to find certain things to add into their pot, or you have certain cleaning ladies or maids that are still washing down the floors and the walls of all the blood and viscera. And sometimes you can use that against your enemies in combat by luring them in certain areas to help them either set them up for an easier kill, or just to evade them altogether to keep going down the road where you're supposed to be going. I like the customization of certain other of your guns. If you come across that, I feel as though that's more better when you look at it from the point of view of Leon S. Kennedy, because he does get more for bang for his buck for a lot of the weapons he's able to deal with. And of course, the combat styles with the knives or any other sharper objects is really cool. For Grace Ashcroft, he just really does just make shivs and other sharp pointing objects to be able to use as it is. But I feel as though one of the better instruments that you use in your tool belt for dispatching all these mutated creatures and monstrosities is the Requiem gun. That thing is a powerhouse of a weapon, and it's also interesting to examine when you look at it from the point of view from Ashcroft. Having to utilize the bless system to be able to use as a form of creating weapons or tools or various other resources is also a really interesting high point. And I also like this little Easter eggs that they throw out in the Resident Evil saga. As if you see it come across them, you'll absolutely enjoy them. Now, when we look at Resident Evil Requiem through the presentation view, the RE engine, Capcom really knows how to utilize it. I love the graphics. It's definitely as the entries go further and further along, you see how they're actually able to make things look. Even though I wouldn't call them necessarily photorealistic, but I definitely will say it is a realism that is stylized in the world itself. It definitely, I love seeing how they're able to take certain mutations in the T-virus affected individuals, and of course certain zombies and creatures that pop up. The world itself, being able to experience Raccoon City after the destruction and the fall was awesome. And I mean, seeing how that city was how it was realized, or the mansions, you know, that's a staple in the Resident Evil saga. We're able to go to certain mansions and see how well they decorate a house, how certain aspects of the underbelly of the corruption, of the sterilization of certain testing facilities makes you feel very claustrophobic and almost at your seat in the edge. Again, certain sequences where you're dealing with more impressive and very dangerous enemies, like the girl having those sequences, seeing how and when she actually ends up going into the dark, coming from the darkness and into the lighted areas, and see how the physics bubbles her skin, and when she is exposed to it was really interesting. Now, again, this is a horror game, so it's always going to be expected that they're going to take things in the extreme direction. And I feel as though with the Resident Evil franchise, they are no strangers to how blood and viscera goes. And again, seeing that this particular entry, being able to dispatch a lot of the creatures and the horrific things that are flowing around, either in this the more enclosed areas or outside in your environments. See how blood splatters and it stays on the walls, and having things being able to clean it up as they go wrong, or the destruction of the whole body depending on what kind of weapons you're using, is some very interesting stuff, to say the least. The details between clothing and various weapons is stuff that you just can't pass up when you actually get to see it, and actually appreciate it when it's actually shown to you. But again, the violence in this game, I feel as though is definitely something that I feel as though was a little bit raised up, depending on how you look at the entries down the before this one. I felt like, dang, when you destroyed something, when you shot a zombie in the head, you see the explosion of the head or body parts and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that I'm actually looking for whenever I'm experiencing these types of games, and I feel as though that's actually something that Resident Evil Requiem brought to the table, and I hope that they only just increase it as we go on into the next chapters. Now, when I look at it from any aspects of how they could actually do better, again, when they put you into certain environments and exploration, and I'm actually really centering this on the Raccoon City areas, I feel as though they really should have went with the aspect of just basically opening it up. Or when you first enter the game, when you're into the city itself, I really wish that you actually, again, I feel as though at this point where we need to see a open world variation of Resident Evil, to be able to explore things as you go, because that's half the fun in a Resident Evil game, is the exploration of these creepy environments, of the situation itself. And it's just about time that we actually got there. And I feel as though if that was actually in this game, it could have definitely rose this even higher. So, at the end of the day, for Resident Evil Requiem, I definitely will see this as a great entry into the Resident Evil franchise. It definitely has way more things that I didn't think they was going to actually do, but at the same time, there's always room for improvement, and this entry just it falls in the great category, but I can't wait for them to actually excel beyond that. But that's my review for Resident Evil Requiem. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And let's talk about this in the comments. How did you feel? Or did you actually play Resident Evil Requiem? Have you played any Resident Evil games? What aspects from the series do you actually feel as though they need to bring back? Or what stuff did you feel as though they should add going forward? Let's discuss. But as always, I'm Aaron, and this is Segawa Productions. See y'all later.